And we are live. What's going on, YouTube Live? It's your boy, Billy Rowe. Today is Tuesday, so you know what that means. It's time for a First Row Intersation. Welcome to the First Row. So tonight's topic is, are you being used? With, I always say, the fan favorite. I call him Cousin Mo, but his name is Moses Jenkins. If you could really quickly say hello to the people, Cousin Mo.
Hello, hello, hello to those who are going to be live with us throughout the show, those who will catch us in a rechat. Brother Mo, your Morehouse grad. I'm also a father and a husband. So glad to be with you, cousin. Once again, looking like you're getting too many push-ups, bro. Too many push-ups.
The shirts are just getting smaller. I ain't did no extra push-ups.
They is making the shirt smaller, man. They making them all snug or something now, man.
Optical illusion, you know, just the camera's optical illusion. So again, I would like to welcome you guys to the First Row. So tonight's topic being about, are you being used? I always like to start off actually with explaining what is an intersation, because it's still relatively new, but you're only going to get this so many more times before I either expect you to know or you're going to have to catch a replay to find out. So what intersation is when you take interview and conversation, when you match those together, you get intersation. So in my life, I'm very fortunate. I have a very diverse network of friends, family, acquaintances, strangers that I meet on the street. I have a very diverse network, to say the least. And with that diverse network, I have many conversations that are from A to Z. Just anything you can think about, I've probably had a conversation with one of these friends or acquaintances about or with. And in those conversations, we typically go from a surface level into much more deeper, meaningful, growth-inspiring levels, asking questions of each other of, what does that mean to you? How do you apply that to your life? How has that helped you? How has that experience helped you grow? And so what I've done is I created Intersations as a means to open up a literal lens into those conversations so that there's an opportunity for us all to grow together and be able to actually experience the content or the conversation as it develops. So that's what an intersation is. Tonight's topic is a topic that is it's very important to me, because I like to believe that I'm a giver. I like to give to people. I like to be the one giving and not lending and not borrowing. That's who I like to be. But in being that person, it is very important to protect yourself and make sure that you're not being used or putting yourself in situations that you're used. So I feel like this is a good conversation to have with my cousin Mo, two guys that can get on the camera, articulate their thoughts well, and be able to hopefully bring you guys in, though you will see us speaking. What's going on, JC? You'll see us speaking on the video back and forth. This is a very much interactive conversation. So if you have a nugget you want to insert, if you have a question you want to ask, or if you just want to say what's up to the people in the chat, please feel free to do so. I'm happy to engage with you. Moses is happy to engage with you, and the people in the chat are happy to engage with you. If you're watching on the replay, then you're gonna have to engage in the comments, and we'll get back to you when we see those comments as well. So with that, let's get started. As always, Cousin Mo, you've introduced yourself. If you could do, we're gonna start off right into the intersation. If you could do me a favor and explain to me what this topic of, are you being used, means to you.
Perfect. So, like, your introduction always comes up so crisp, man. I think you rehearse it in the shower somewhere. You be rehearsing it. I know you do. But are you being used? The value that you freely contribute, or the value that you contribute inside of your interactions, is that something to where people are just taking and taking and taking, to where you're pouring into others' glasses and not getting that, what my wife likes to challenge me on, reciprocity? Are you even allowing yourself to be someone who can receive when they want to pour back into your glass? Or are you so caught up with, you know, maybe where your headspace is, maybe you're in a place of affluence or a place of convenience where you can continue to pour, and you're not giving yourself permission to allow others to pour into you. Whatever the obstacle might be that is obstructing you from being able to receive might be the thing. So are you being used? Can have a positive or a negative connotation. I like to focus on the positive, which is that self-affirming. I'm giving myself permission to allow others to pour into me. If not, I am allowing myself to be used. That's it.
Ooh, it's about to go down tonight. So I love what you're doing there as far as having the positivity of, are you being used? Basically, are you inactive almost in that sense? And I like where you're going with that. This is the thing about Intersations that I really like, is that we don't do a lot of discussion about the topic before the topic comes up to play. So this is going to be a fun night. I hope you guys are ready. But for me, I'm with you on that positivity side, especially when you say, are you giving yourself permission? Are you so busy on pouring out of a sippy cup that your fluid only goes one way out and you're not even allowing people to pour back into you? Or do you actually have the lid off to where you can pour and people can also pour into you? Which, I'm going to be honest, is something I struggle with. But that, and also the other side of that, the negative side, because I'm a both sides of the picture person. I like to focus on both sides, being that, are you adequately allocating your resources, which is your time, your energy. I'm not even talking about the physical ones, just we'll just stick with time and energy, your emotions, things that are internal in your internal climate. Are you adequately or accurately allocating those resources to people who are deserving of those resources? And that goes really to the extent of standards. So that's when I think about this topic, are you being used? Because I have been used before, both positively and negatively I've been used. And so really trying to make sure that I stay on that positive side of being used purposefully versus being used manipulatively. So that is what it means to me. With that, let's just jump in. So for those who are used to Intersations, where normally it's a very structured conversation from the sense of me asking questions and kind of directing the conversation in the way that I want it to go, tonight we're actually going to try a free flow format where we're try to say that 3 times fast, where we're actually going to have a couple things that I want to bring into the conversation, but I really want the audience and the people who are watching live to be able to kind of gauge where this conversation goes. So feel free, jump in, ask questions immediately. Whatever you want to contribute, we can take many different paths tonight and just an experiment, just to see what happens. You know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but we can't say we didn't try. So with that, I do want to give you, just in case while we give the chat time to figure out their questions, Cousin Mo, I do want to give you my first question that I do have here. And it goes to being used in the regards to just identifying how you're being used. And you can go from the positive standpoint that you were speaking of earlier, but how do you identify when you're being used, and not even just when, how you are being used?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take the positive. There's 2 ways that I can go in my personal experiences that I live with every day as a giver, as a provider, as an enabler, as a man. The part of my self-esteem that identifies as being my value is deeply vested in how much positive impact I can have in the lives of others. And so I almost measure my worth in people's receptivity to my value or to me given to them. I'm hinged on it. Like I come unhinged when I feel like I have some worth and people are not really taking advantage of that value. I find myself in almost a state of, I don't want to say depression, but I feel less than fulfilled when I have those interactions and it's like they're not listening to me, or when I have great opinions and they don't want to hear the opinion fully out, or when they feel argumentative or offensive or defended or defensive about something that I'm saying, when really I'm just trying to build them up to acknowledge the parts in their character or the parts in their behaviors where I've observed some things that I might think, you know, that could be tweaked a little bit. Let me work with you on that, or let me provide a little bit of insight. If they're not receptive to it, or if they're not willing to implement any changes, sometimes I feel like brick walls up, there's nothing I can do. I got to either move on. So I'm going to talk for them too. One is my relationship. See it all the time. You know it. As the man, sometimes we can be taken for granted in some of the ways that we communicate. Are we coming off as too harsh? Are we being insensitive? You know, all of the different negative ways that they can look at our feedback when really we're just trying to give. We're just trying to make ourselves open and vulnerable to being used in that positive sense. We have value that we can add beyond just paying the bills, beyond just being the disciplinarian for the kids, beyond just being a comforter and being a sexual object in the bedroom. That has its place. But even in our intellect, we're educated brothers, we can provide. Then the second one is at work. I experience it a lot. I'm still the minority there. Educated Black man is somewhat of still a they're afraid of it a little bit. The opinions, it may be relative to the other side of the market, that more what they call charity. When we speak on, there's a lot of ways that we can improve by helping those who I work in a banking system, so who may not be as financially literate. Are we doing our best there to provide some education around interest rates and things like that? No, that's not good for business. That shuts it down. I'm like, look, there's still a demographic of the underbanked there who would benefit from this, and it creates loyalty and lifelong partners. No, it's not the ROI that we're looking for, but on the other end, if they miss a payment, they'll get a lot of money from those folks. If they have late fees, a lot of money. Interest, because interest is stretched out over time, they'll get a lot of money from almost what it feels like exploitative of their ignorance. And the responsibility to help educate those folks is not something they're assuming. So in that sense, I'm like, look, you picked me up, you hired me, African-American young man, you know that I have a perspective. Now when I'm bringing my authentic self and I'm willing to engage even some of the more challenging areas, it feels like I'm being shut down. Once again, the positive contribution of willing to be used inside of the corporate system, but finding resistance from those who may not be as open and willing to accept it. Those are my two examples, just throwing them out there from the positive lens. We give, we provide, we do everything at home, and for the ones that we love, as well as for the companies that we work for. And we may find ourselves not being received as we might like as being givers. What you think?
Man, just shoot, you dropping the knowledge tonight. That's what I think. But, as far as what you're saying, no, I definitely agree with what you're saying as far as having more facets, having more dimensions in what we are as men. I mean, just starting from that standpoint, being a man and what you have to offer. Now, I'm going to go back to what you said at the beginning. As far as sexually, there's some things that I believe I have to offer, and I'm okay with those being utilized from time to time. So I'm not going to cut that down. I know you with me on that one, Cousin Mo. But as far as the other areas that we have to offer, whether it's our intellect, whether it's our compassion, I actually put a post up the other day that said, how can we as a society be able to acknowledge when a man can experience a headache, which is a physical ailment, a headache, your head hurts, whatever. However, we have yet to be able to grasp the concept of them experiencing heartache, like that sensitive, that softness, I'm not saying that, woodle noodle. I think in some aspects, there's men that need to be certain, they need to be certain pillars in their community and in their relationships and in their families and in their circles. However, there are certain aspects of men that are underdeveloped, and because they're underdeveloped because they're underutilized. So are they being used? No, they're not being used. Men don't typically come to men and be like, hey man, I had a hard day and the job's beating me up and I don't know. I just don't know where to really go from here. We might complain, barbershop banter, some stuff like that, but we don't really dive into, well, this is where this is affecting me. And I'm seeing that I'm becoming a different person when I'm with people that I love and care about because of this over here that I'm not addressing. Can you help me as a brother? Can you help me as a sister? Can you help me as a mentor? Whatever it may be, can you help me to better myself? Can you help me to move myself into a healthier dynamic with what I really want out of the working relationship, the romantic relationship, the friendship, whatever it is? Help me move into a healthier space. And so it unfortunately creates a double-edged sword where you have the malnourished side getting sharpened because you're not utilizing a skill set. And then the other side is the issues that come from being malnourished because you're depressed, you're anxious. I was just talking to a cat on the phone, one of my friends. Hey, you got high blood pressure now because of all these things that you're inadequately prepared to deal with because people are not interacting with you or utilizing you in a manner that is going to be healthy for you both. So I agree with what you're saying. One of the things that you also said, Cousin Mo, was about being an enabler. And I think we normally use that term enabler as a negative connotation, I believe is the word. What's going on, Cousin Brian? We normally use that as a negative connotation. However, being an enabler is almost, I use the word empower. You have the ability to enable somebody, to empower them, to lift them up, to support them. Now, can you do that for always and forever? Maybe not. The picture that I actually used for this particular conversation was recommended by a friend of mine. She said, hey, what about showing are you being used in this state of a drought? And so I used a flower that was growing up out of ground that it has sucked every nutrient and everything that it can get out of it. And so at some point when you're enabling somebody, if you're shrinking and shriveling because you don't have the nutrients you're needing, they're growing, they're thriving, eventually you're either both going to die or somebody else is going to have to pick up that person and move them to more healthier, fertile soil. So that enabler aspect is a challenge. That empowerment aspect is a challenge for me because of the fact that it can sometimes get blurred with ego. Look what I did. Look what I can do. Going back to mommy daddy issues that we're going to have a panel intersation on somewhere down the road. But mommy daddy issues, look what I did. Do you love me more now? Do you accept me more now? So that's what I think so far. So Cousin Mo, I'm going to shoot it back to you because I don't want to do all the talking tonight. Is there anything you want to chime in with what I said?
Yeah, real quick, man, 2 powerful points. And I'm going to start on the second one. That flower that was growing in there, I was thinking when I saw it, I was like, oh, I hope that flower is able to find a bee, or a bee is still attracted to that flower that's growing up in those dire circumstances, so that its pollen, its seeds might have a better chance to grow outside of this drought that it's been growing in itself. So there are opportunities that if we can just reach out, and I think that's what we do as an African-American from Del Paso Heights, there weren't many opportunities for us to find gainful employment right there in a neighborhood that would have allowed us to be that pillar inside that community. And so I think we were like that flower, trying to seek if we can find the bee or something to hold on to that may make life a little bit easier for our next generations. We might be okay. And then the second one, oh, you said what's up to Brian? Who else is there? We got Zakia, Omega Black. I think I saw Cousin Gatewood come in. So shout out to all of y'all. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, the enabler, the positive twist on enabler. So we know I'm a veteran. Going back to the VA now. I've been going 3 days a week, getting some type of therapy for, the PTSD that I never got treatment for years. So imagine all of the toxicity, if that's the way we put it, that I was allowed to just keep building up and keep soaking in to the point where in my interactions, even with my wife, my children, there were things that I may have been saying and doing that I wasn't even cognizant of because I was still acting out that toxicity. And I wasn't even able to understand that as much as I wanted to be an enabler, it was probably because I was still running myself and not willing to discipline myself, not willing to chastise myself. And so I was taking a soft position, even on things that I probably knew to be wrong, taking a soft position. And so when even you're ready to be used, and you think that you're ready to be used and you have a value that you can add, there may still be some times, and I know I'm guilty of it too, where there's things inside of you where even using you is not the best case. Got to say that twice, one time. Even when you're ready, when you think you're ready, if you still have some toxicity that you're dealing with, as much value as you might have, it might not be in the best interest of that other person to use it. So that's my counter narrative to myself. Going into these positions, high-spirited, ready, ambitious, ready to give and give and give. But have I really checked at the door, checked my internal core to make sure that what I'm giving is not just a projection of the hurt that I was feeling, the loneliness, the rejection that I was feeling, the fear of suffering that I was feeling. So now I'm projecting it in the form of, hey, I just want to help you, or I just want to help others. So big points, had to retouch on them. It's not all hunky dory, but I have to say in my relationships and even in my gainful employment, what you just said right there about the being an enabler, there is both ways to look at that as well. So respect, big ups.
True, definitely. No, I appreciate it. Hey man, JC says she's at church already on a Tuesday.
Let's go to church.
So I think also one more thing, because you touched on it, as far as that projection, it's almost like flying under a false flag. So the story of the Trojan horse. You set that gift out there and say, here's a gift, bring it into your life, bring it into your castle, your camp, and it's going to destroy you. And that's what happens when we approach what you're talking about, that empowerment or enabling from a standpoint of, I'm toxic and I want to make my symptoms go away. In order to feel better, I have to impart myself or pour myself, my toxic poison, into somebody else's life under the gauge or under the guise of help and under the guise of enabling and empowering and supporting them. So I think that's an area that I really want to explore in the next question that I'm going to ask you. And again, this is free flow tonight for those who are coming in and just joining us live. So feel free to jump in and engage. Really quick before I even ask the next question, Brother Bruce says, not only toxicity, but emotional damage should be in check before being ready is key. Oh, okay. Now I understand. Got it. But so going down that toxic path of really addressing some of those issues beforehand, and maybe kind of shifting the question from are you being used to are you ready to be used? How do you address some of those things in your life? I mean, some of the things that you may be dealing with right now, how do you address some of those things from the standpoint as a man, from the standpoint as a vet, from the standpoint as a professional, as a minority, all these different perspectives that you have? How do you address being ready to be used and purging that toxicity so that you're not contaminating other people with that negativity?
Very valid. So there is some things I just won't touch. So when, people do have the open conversations, whether it's business or, hey, I was just looking for a little bit of business feedback. A lot of folks have ideas and they say, okay, well, you've been in corporate America or you've been successful. You went and got educated at, am I still looking a little dark? My bad.
I mean, not that I have a problem with dark, cousin. No shade.
No shade. You see how he got me twice on that? Got another twice. But yeah, listening more and asking more questions. So instead of, I used to just be the rusher and try to give advice, give counsel, give recommendations based off of the information that I already had, rather than truly and intently listening to what it is they were saying. And then instead of giving an answer, using a more Socratic model of asking more questions that help deduce the information that they already have within them, whatever their fears might be. So instead of me approaching it with the toxicity that I might have, my fear of rejection, and so I'm going to give some advice. I want to give an example, so it may sound a little convoluted, but just stick with me. It's going to come out straight. So instead of me just injecting what I have, which is a fear of rejection, and so my opinion will be based off my lens. Oh, don't try that because you might get rejected. Instead, listen, because they might not have that fear. They may be a little bit more risk seeking. They may be ready to endeavor in something a little bit more challenging. And so asking the questions about, well, what have you tried already? How did that work for you? What do you think went wrong when you did it that time? What do you think went right when you did it that time? What would you like to continue to do? What is your actual goal? See, there's 6, 7, 8, 9 different questions deep that we can continue to go before we ever get to me giving them a suggestion. And they will have already understood for themselves some of the things that they needed in order to answer the question themselves. That's just a business reference, but it's also relative to relationships too, right? Because I've been in my marriage for over 11 years and I still find myself going almost redundant, the cycle, saying the same things over and over. But now I realize, even in being in business, sometimes you got to say things 7 times just for them to hear it the first time, for it to actually start the process. Then from there, now that it's processed, it has to run through their filters. So I got my filters as a man, as a vet, as an educated Morehouse man. You can't tell a Morehouse man much. First of all, you can tell a Morehouse man when you see him, but you can't tell him much. That's our slogan. I got a lot of filters that I vetted through. I was poor. I was raised with parents who had jobs but didn't have much money at the end of the month. I was raised with the angry dad syndrome. I was raised with alcoholism and a lot of toxic things, behaviors, and features around. I was raised loving dysfunction. And so from my lenses, I may come with perspectives that just might not be as helpful unless I'm willing to listen. And if we can connect on the level of dysfunction and both of us agree, we find common ground on what it is we both agree on, then maybe they'll be receptive to it. So here, last to close it out, you've identified that there are some issues or some a certain set of lenses that you filter information through. And you don't want that toxic level to you don't want to be pouring Kool-Aid when they just needed water. And your Kool-Aid, your water is already, you done added some sugar, some spice, some lemon, some fresh fruit, a little drop of honey. You got yours already spiced up because you done been through it and you've been reflective for a few years. You done been without people for a few years. You've been with people who are healthy. You've had time to actually go back over where you were at fault, as well as to forgive yourself for being at fault. And then you've also identified, well, I'm not blaming myself for that no more. I'm not blaming myself for that no more. And you've started taking different measures in your own life. So now your Kool-Aid's a little bit sweet, but they're still dealing with water. And so you might, even though we had the conversation 7 times, she still has her lenses that she's processing the information through before she's even, this is my wife I'm speaking to, but in other relationships, they might now be in, they've heard it 7 times. Now they're able to say, well, I don't understand it, but I'm willing to give it a try. What should I do? And now they have to process what are their next steps. So even though they've heard it and they've listened, and it's been some time developing and matriculating with them in a relationship, now how do they implement it? And once they implement it, do they like the person that they're becoming once they've made these changes? Or if it's a business solution, do they like that idea? Is it something that they are willing to continue to do? That's still going to be their choice. And so willing to be used, I fear rejection. If somebody's not going to be open to what I'm saying, I feel like I'm not doing my job. If I feel like I'm just going to be rejected, I feel like they don't want me. What am I doing? And so that kept me from going out. Now I give myself permission to listen, to learn, to find that common ground, connect with them at that common ground. And then here's the big one. If they're not going to implement it, that's all right too, because they still have their lenses to deal with, and they still have all responsibility or accountability for the actions, what happens next. So that's my big deal. Dealing with toxicity, I can't say the word, but I know what it means, and I can spell it, Brother Bruce. Cousin Gatewood, I could spell it. But when we're dealing with it and we don't want to pour that Kool-Aid into somebody's glass, we still have to just acknowledge where they are, acknowledge where we are, and then be willing to open up and work with them, even though.
Well, what you're saying all leads up to, at the end of the day, no matter what recommendation you make, at the end of the day, it's their cup. So they get to decide what they want to carry in it. So one of the things you touched on, and I think so I always have all these different ideas of what visual I want to use or what graphic I want to use to promote the particular show that I'm going to do. And it just depends on where my mind kind of wants to go. But one of the visuals I was thinking of was trash and are you being used in like a dump. And when you said suffering from angry father syndrome, angry black father syndrome, it's like, are you as the child, are you as the son being used as this sounding board, dumping ground to dump their frustrations onto? And in a lot of ways, I grew up in a similar household to you, where my father was very angry, taught me some things about temper tantrums that I probably didn't really need to learn, and overachieved at for a very long time in my own personal life. But it's that dump mentality of, these are the rejections that I've experienced, and here's how I have in this toxic solution have learned to address these scenarios. And so I'm going to pour that on you by giving you these lectures that tell you how much I don't like you, or give you these frustrations of all the bills that I have to pay and not enough, what they say, not enough money for the month or something like that.
Not enough money at the end of your month.
Yeah, exactly. So giving me these things that drive a young, malleable young man into adopting some of those things. And it's like, if I was to take this can right here and say, here, I'm done with it, and give it to you, granted, now some people may take it because they understand there's value in it. But if there's no value in it, if you're not going to go and take it and turn it in, then it's just me handing you a piece of trash. Are you going to take that trash and use it? No, it's like, well, I don't want the trash. So physically, we understand that we don't want garbage in. However, mentally, because of that seeking of acceptance, like, this is dad, this is pops, this is who I want to accept me. I want him to love me. I want to be, a man's man for my father. We adopt some of those things that are not healthy for us. And in essence, it is us being used by our parents. I mean, our parents are not perfect. They have their flaws as well. Just as us as parents, we are not perfect. We have our flaws. We may what's the word, Cousin Mo? Unconsciously, subconsciously pour these things into our children that we really don't even mean to pour into them, because we understand that it's a situation we're dealing with. So I think that's a very important aspect of, are you being used? Are you being used not just from the standpoint of having resources drained and taken away from you, being in the empowerment and the positivity and helping support somebody. But are you being used as a sounding board that is really a trash bag to pour other people's issues and toxicity? We're going to stick with that word tonight because we're going to get you through that one. Toxicity into your bag. Let me jump really quick back to the chat because there's a couple people who have said some things. JC says family is very versed in this row. I think that goes back to when we were talking about toxicity, and being emotionally damaging. Antoine Wade, Mr. Wade says, oh yeah, I can't sit next to y'all. Y'all will have me looking like an uneducated brother. Y'all way too smart. Yeah, whatever, Mr. MBA. We already know who. We know what you're working with. Don't worry. And then I think everybody was laughing because I was talking about the shade, but it's, no shade, no shade. And then Bruce says, man, Brother Jenkins, you are speaking to me, to him specifically, preach. So let's keep it rolling. I want to bring an aspect in here of being used, not so much from, well, we can stay on the positive side, being used as a person who's empowering or enabling or encouraging. Let's bring the aspect of karma into play on this. So when it comes to being used from the perspective of you being the giver and not the borrower, what does that mean to you when it comes to the aspect or the mindset or the methodology of karma?
Absolutely. Karma is such a thing. Like, I don't know if I've studied like the Dalai Lama and all of the different spiritual, esoteric definitions of how karma really works in this world. But I know if you have the intention to do good and you're not keeping score, like, I did this good thing for you, or what they said, the Indian giver, if you're not that person, but in your heart, in your natural heart, like babies, to where you just love to give. You love to see people do well. I love to see Black people do well. In fact, I've even gotten to the point where not just Black folks, I love to see a lot of folks do well. And when people are doing well and feeling well, you walk in and you get the genuine good morning. You get, the good feelings of brotherlyhood, compassion, not competition. I think that drives a wedge through us, drives a wedge through our soul, allow us to do some things that are not so becoming, even as men, not so supportive, but in the spirit of brotherly love, that Philadelphia, that brother to sisterly love. I really love to see that happen. So when it comes to karma, even when you're willing to be used and you're not willing to take score, but you'll continue to do for others, I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the most refreshing experiences that we can have. That's where you'll start finding your heroes, those who are willing to go to bat for others, for strangers that they don't know, those who will be willing to stop crime in their own neighborhoods, even though it's not their kids. They don't even have to have kids, but they'd be willing to be a mentor at Grant High School for that 9th grade ready to drop out because the Bloods have a party on every Thursday and he has to get in popular with the Bloods, or because, this relationship over here, his family dynamic is broken, so now he needs a space to go. We have people who, if they're no longer keeping score, not looking to give handouts, but just looking to do a positive, a good deed, to have a positive impact in others, we can see the development even in our own communities, in our homes. Not just because my wife really needed it, it was a long day and she needed a massage, but on the days where not because she earned it, she did something exceptional at work and now she's ready to celebrate, but just because, and still do something good, rub her feet, rub her back, make a meal, something like that. I know she does it for me being open and willing to do that for her, but positive vibes, not keeping score. We need those. I think, like they said, you could tell somebody a negative thing, they'll remember it. You got to do 7 positives to every negative just to combat the negative, because the negative will stay with you. So we definitely have a space for more positive use of our time. Be used. Be willing to be used, Cousin Ro, and don't keep score, but be willing to be used.
Hey, so you're telling the truth right now, because see, that used to be an aspect that I had a problem with, was I wanted to keep score. And so, cousin, normally at the end of the intersation, I do tools for the first row, but what I'm actually going to do is we're going to incorporate the tools for the first row into this conversation, because what you just said really speaks to the first tool that I had on the list for tools for the first row tonight. And that is actually giving without expectation. I have a really good friend, his name is Sean, who, and Brother Bruce will testify to this, that shared with us a concept of really, at the end of the day, when you go to open up your heart, your mind, your energy, your time, whatever it is that you're going to give, ask yourself the simple question of, what do I want to give? And if it's something you want to give, then you give it without expectation because you want to give it. So whatever benefit you feel, whether it's the warm and fuzzies or you feel like you're investing in the relationship that you want to be in, whatever it is, your giving is that is the reward for your giving. You feel like you are making the, you know, the foot rub. You're giving the foot rub to show this person that you appreciate them. That is what you want to do, is you want to receive that they see you appreciate them. Now, whether they know that you appreciate them or not from the foot rub, it's completely irrelevant because it comes down to what do you want to give. If you want to give a foot rub and you give a foot rub, then you should be satisfied because you have given what you want to give. Now, that doesn't mean that there is no standards. I mean, I don't just go giving. I see people who are homeless every day. And I don't go giving every single person that I see homeless all my money because my standard is okay, I need to be able to support my household and my kids with the income that I have. So if I have some food or something that I can give, I'll give it freely. And I don't have to go and, you know, keep that score where it's like, hey, you know, now I got to go on social media and be like, yeah, you know, picture gave to a homeless man today, picture sent a, you know, something to a homeless person today. Like, I don't have to do all that. However, what I do is I make sure that I'm giving out of the right space, the right mental space, the right compassion space for myself, and that is what has been the reward for me. So the challenge that I guess the thing that helped me, besides what Sean said, helped me overcome that keeping score mentality, because I would come back to you and be like, well, in 1984, when I was 3, I gave you one of my Jolly Ranchers, and that cost me 5 cents. So technically, you still owe me a penny times the interest. You know, I'm keeping that score, and I used to come back and weaponize what I had initially gave. And I feel like when you weaponize what you've given, karma says, okay, well, the good that you were supposed to receive back for having these good intentions and putting out positive vibes and positive energy are now going to be negated because of the fact that you have now a negative connotation that is attached to it. Like, I'm going to give to you good, but you got to give back to me good or else. No, I'm going to give to you good. And when I no longer want to give to you good, I will stop giving to you good. Now, if that means that you're still in a place where you want to give to me, or you're not in a place where you want to give to me, that's irrelevant. That is what I mean by giving without expectation. And lastly, I'll leave with this before I hand it back over to you, Cousin Mo. Actually, we're going to jump in the chat. But giving, the giving aspect, what I found and what allowed me to let go of keeping score was that giving with expectation, what it was doing was it was making my giving, handing over, it was allowing me to hand over my power of frustration, anger, and resentment to the other person because they did not react the way I wanted them to react when I gave them what I gave them with all these intentions attached to it. So that's the aspect is when you give without intention, you basically remove that power struggle, and that power struggle that leads to frustration and resentment and anger and animosity. That is removed because you're giving out of your true heart and out of your true self. So you stop giving what you don't want to give. That's the tool for the first row. If you guys didn't write it down, you have to watch the replay. I'm going to jump in this chat really quick, Cousin Mo. It looks like we have a couple people. Brother Bruce, he confirmed what I said, what Sean said. He said that's so damn true. Bob McKinley, he was on an Intersation last week. If you didn't watch that one, you definitely want to watch that. That was on leadership. Bob is an executive level leader. You definitely want to get some notes on that one. But he says, when you give someone a second chance or a third chance and know they are still dumping on you, it makes you think to move on. But karma comes back to you, good karma, and to them, not always so good karma. True. When you're giving in the right heart, I mean, you might lose some resources up front, but karma will pay you back sometimes 2 and 3 times fold for what you have given out. Now, I do believe you should be hopefully trying to sow into good ground, pouring and giving into good ground. But if you're not giving into good ground, there is still some benefits that you will get. And sometimes the benefit is knowledge of how to know when to give to somebody, when they're ready to receive what you have to offer. The second thing we have is Antoine Wade. Giving shouldn't come with expectation of getting something back. If you do this, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Absolutely. And then he agreed with me. Thank you. Brother Bruce says, so we're going to go into a question because he has the question, because I'll let you answer this one. How does one stop giving good without expectation when all the good they are giving isn't being received, or reciprocation of it feels toxic to you, but to the outsider or the outside world, it looks great? So he's basically saying, how do you give without an expectation when all the good isn't being received, when they're not receiving all the good that you're giving, and then also when the perception of the outside world would be like, man, what they're giving back to you is great, but what it feels like to you doesn't feel so great. And then, for example, good parents, bad kids. You're still muted, cousin.
I don't know. I don't know. Final answer. I don't know. I don't know at all. In my experience, there's been times, and if I'm interpreting it right, there have been times where the perceived value of my gifts are not well received. So the perceived value, like you made the analogy about trash, for some, it was just bad timing for me to be giving them what I was trying to give them. The conversations, the game, I would say, that I was trying to put them up on, to help protect them from possible hurt, harm, and danger later. They just weren't at a point where they could even receive it. And so what was, there's an analogy putting, I'll say it like this. I'll give an example. It's not the good parents, bad kids, but it kind of has a relation. When I first got with my wife, she wasn't ready for Fendi, Prada, Gucci shoes, and all of that. My standard may have wanted to see a woman who was finely adorned, dressed, jewelry, earrings, hair tied and fried and laid to the side. But now she's a teacher. She can't walk in them heels anyway. You know what I'm saying? It probably wouldn't have been the appropriate attire for her to wear the tight-fitting dress to where she goes to work every day. So even though I was going to the store buying these gifts, putting these gifts there, and I wanted to see it, her self-confidence to be boosted, I wanted to see her sensuality or sexuality to be enhanced, and I wanted that attraction to be resonated with me as well. It was still coming from a space where she wasn't able to receive it. With children, you might consider yourself good until you hold that mirror up and see what other people are able to do. So stop comparing. First of all, you be you and be the best you that you can. They say, how much time do you spend? Are you on the phone? Are you on the game? Could you have been spending that with the kids? At first, I was beating myself up. Then I bought myself a PlayStation 4 as well. And every so often, me and my son will play Fortnite together as a unit. So now I don't feel so bad. We're both playing the game. We both have a good time, and we still can connect through a medium that my child likes. And every once in a while, I hear him say something. I'm able to provide some guidance and correction just on how he's interacting with folks online. So from the outside world, they may perceive that to be, well, you could be doing something more useful with your time. But I get to define that, Brother Bruce. I get to define what it looks like in the dynamics of my relationship with my son. Does that make me a good parent? Does it make me a bad parent? Does it make my son bad? Because oftentimes I will catch him calling people things. Yeah, I did it when I was online. That online space is addictive. You can say some mean and cruel things, and those fifth graders are, they'll pull it out. But and so I've heard my son respond to it, and I'm able to turn those into teaching moments. Not a bad kid, but a kid who is still a kid and who could use some of this guidance from a father on dealing with some of these interactions that they're having. So can't give you what will work for you, but I can give you a personal experience. Hopefully I said something in that little segment that kind of resonates with you. Me and wifey's experience is still an ongoing struggle, identifying where it is that when she wants to use me, when she wants to take my words of advice or my finances or what I can contribute and use those in a positive manner, that she's open to doing so, and that not allowing, here's one thing that I wanted to also piggyback on, compassion fatigue. Have you heard of that, Cousin Ro? Where you giving and giving.
Like,
yeah, man, you just get tired of doing for folks. You can get to the point where I'm doing, and they're not receiving it. And so you get to the point where you just add more bricks to the top of your wall, make it harder for you to even be able to give to the next person because you've had so many experiences. Imagine each brick that you're putting on that wall that you're building, and you're going to shut this government down. Never mind. If they don't get this wall built. But all of these bricks are the experiences that you may have gone through. And so you're taking the negative experiences and you're just continuing to pile them on to make it, to defend yourself from feeling used and abused, feeling overused. And that's what I would like to call that point to which you're at compassion fatigue, where you start feeling tired and exhausted because you've almost depleted your sippy cup of everything you had to pour out. All of your Kool-Aid is gone. You got a couple of sips left, and now you're looking at the little bit of drop that you got left, and you may have the tendency to even look at other people's cups and say, look how much I've poured into them. Now you're going back into the keep and score mentality. Look how much I've poured into them. I've done this and this and that, and now I don't even have any juice left for myself. But I'll tell you that you do have a lot of juice left in your tank. You got a lot of reserves, and the way you got your juice is still by the positive things that you can do for others. So don't build that wall. In fact, tear that wall down and find ways to find common ground. Boom. That's sippy cup.
Sippy cup on me. I like that. No, that's definitely really good. That I like that response. I'm gonna jump in and kind of respond to it, but I want to go ahead and jump with the next tool. I mean, I feel like y'all just flowing down the list. The second tool for the first row tonight is give yourself permission to say no under any circumstances. I feel like that is where compassion fatigue used to set in for me, where I was giving and giving and giving and giving, but never willing to say no because it was like what they need and they need and they need. However, there's that mirror. That mirror works two ways. It helps you see flaws, but it also helps you see what you need. We live a life predominantly in a first-person perspective. My 4-year-old yesterday or on Sunday had got a haircut, and he's looking at himself on the camera, and then he's like, but I can't see my hair. I can't see my hair. You can't see pretty much this whole part of your body without a mirror. You almost can't. Well, shoot, I can't even see my neck. But, you know, I got a little bit of muscle up here, so I can see my chest down. But because of that, it's hard to see for ourselves that we too have to be willing to say sometimes no to others so that we can say yes to ourselves. And that's how I have learned to avoid that compassion fatigue. Now, as a parent, there's certain aspects of compassion fatigue that you just got to find the next reserve that you're going to tap into. I'm dealing with that with my oldest son right now. He currently lives with me out here. He needed a little more guidance, a little more hands-on with dad, kind of guiding the wheel. So now he lives in Utah with me. And though there are certain things that he has done to fatigue me, I still have to make sure that I keep pressing on because his success is not necessarily my success. His success is his own success, but I'm invested in him being successful. So even in spite of the compassion fatigue, at the end of the day, I realize he has his own cup. I can pour what I pour into it. He could choose to put a lid on it and not let it go in, but I still have to make sure that I'm pouring the proper things into his life. So that is the second tool, is give yourself permission to say no under any circumstances. That will help you from feeling like you are being used. Because when you start just saying yes in abundance to every single thing, Billy, can you stay late today? Yeah. Hey, Billy, can you come by after work tonight? Yeah. Hey, Billy, I know it's midnight, but can you wake up and come and get me? Yeah. After a while, you're gonna be like, dang, I should have said no to something, because now the next day's here and I'm exhausted and don't have enough energy to carry myself through the day. So I like what you're rocking with there, Cousin Mo, on the compassion fatigue. Brother Bruce, I hope that answered your question. He said, or as a spouse. The only other thing that I will say was something else, Brother Bruce, that you said as far as how does one stop giving good without expectation when all the good they are giving isn't being received? So that goes back to a book that I've read. And Cousin Mo, let me know if you read this book, but The 5 Love Languages. Sometimes what we think we are giving that is good is spoiled to somebody else. So going back to that trash analogy, you may think it's the best thing. Sometimes I'm on this Intersations or on a Wednesday Word or on the first row doing something, and I think I'm giving the best content that is available to man at this point in life. But however, for some people that doesn't resonate. That's just like I had a boss who told me I was not inspirational, yet here I am 2 years later doing inspirational content still. It didn't resonate with him. So though it was good for some people, somebody's watching, so it's good for some, it didn't resonate with him. So it's not good for him. So as good as you may think what you're giving is, it may not be good to them. And the best way to stop giving good with expectation is to simply stop giving until you're ready to be mature enough to say, this is what I truly want to give, and I'm going to give it without expectation. When you get to that level where you're able to just say, it's not about what I'm giving to this person. It's about wanting to give this to this person. And then it's not a matter of whether they receive it or not. They can decide, I can give you this pen today. And if you decide to throw it across the world, that's your prerogative to do so. I gave you the pen for you to do whatever you felt the need you should do with that pen. So I gave you that tool. How you choose to use the tool is completely up to you. So that's my response. That's my 2 cents. Cousin Mo, anything else you want to add before we move on?
This is going to be quick, not long-winded at all. But at work, it's call center environment, calling out, engaging small businesses and some large businesses on, how do we become more profitable? How do we help you grow? There are some metrics. You need to make this many dials. We're looking to grow the business by this much and all of that. But even if they turn the QA and the metrics off, I would still continue to go in and make those dials. Why? Because I found that my reason of giving good, I love to help other people succeed, like I said at the beginning of the call. So my good is still being enacted, even on those people who are like, oh, you're from where? Hang up. Those ones where, yep, I don't have time right now. Hang up. Those ones where it's like, okay, I'm willing to do it, but I just don't have time right now. Okay, let me write that down in my notes. Next call. And then those ones where they're actually able to open up small practices, those that are only probably going to bring in about $5,000 worth of profit, return on interest or ROI at the end of the year, as well as those who are bringing in millions of dollars in net credit sales, in usage. So they really get it. To those who probably get it, but they just don't know how to deploy it, I give my time equally to either those who already have it, as well as those who can't really use me to my fullest. Why? Because I found my personal good. It's enough for me, and I'm happy and content there. Like Cousin Rose says, though, if they try to put in other demands and now we need you to do this and we need to do that, I'm also confident enough to be able to still say no. I know that my good has value, so I will not allow my good to be taken advantage of. Yes, I am willing to be used, but to be taken advantage of is the opposite side of the coin that we might have to discuss on a different night. But tonight, we're going to keep it positive.
All right. Let's throw a couple more things here in the chat. As a parent, there aren't many breaks. I'm good with that. True. Yeah, I'm going to fall back and let the chat chime in. You don't have to fall back, cousin or brother Bruce. You're welcome to stay in and keep it going. If somebody wants to talk, there's plenty of platform for everybody to say something. We preach, bro. I try. I don't want to be a pastor, but I try to preach. Bob McKinley says, it is also how you say it. No can be respectful when you do it right versus dismissive. Probably the toughest example of sell versus tell. True story. Yeah, it's not dismissive. No, it's a matter of no, like no, thank you. It's almost like when somebody says, "Would you like a plate of food?" and you're like, "Nah, I don't want that." Well, that's no, but it's really rude and dismissive. And if you're ever hungry on the street and you ask them for some food, they're probably gonna be like, "Nah, you didn't want that, remember?" So. So it is a matter of how you tell it or how you sell it versus tell it. That is a very powerful point there. Thank you, Bob. And then Bruce also agrees with you, says, true, Bob, very true. So with that, Cousin Mo, I want to move on. This hour of free flow kind of flew by. Man, pew. There's something else that I want to touch base with you with. And it's in the reception mode of being used. So I'll kind of give you some context. For me, one of my greatest, I feel like it's an insecurity. It's not a fear. It's just the insecurity is that I never want to be perceived as a user, like somebody who's using people, trying to take as much as they can take from them, get as much as they can get. I just don't like being that person. That's why typically, like if I'm out and about and it's a group of people, if it's a bill that I can afford, I'm not trying to ball out, but if it's a bill that I can afford, I'll typically say, hey, look, I got it, just to keep it simple. Unless it's a bunch of people, then it's like, okay, look, I got mine plus a little bit more. So if y'all are a little short, y'all figure that out, but I know I'm clear. For yourself, how do you balance accepting gifts and not using people for what they can do or can give to you? How do you balance that out?
Yeah, I'm challenging myself on that to be a little bit more open in 2019. It's not like a resolution, but more just a task. I have people who have reached out to me even and said, yes, Moses, you need executive mentors if you're going to be successful here in corporate America, or even in just in life. If you don't choose to make this place of business where you would like to spend and create a career, you still should have people that are in your corner that you can call on and that you've opened up to and connected with. And so that's what I'm trying to get a little bit more comfortable with. I don't have the answer for it yet because I still have my reservations. I don't, put your business out. Boy, keep your business to yourself. Boy, put your nose down and just do the work. You don't need anybody to complain to. Who wants to listen anyway? If you need any help, look inside yourself. See, all of these I would consider toxic in a corporate space. These are toxic ideas. Just put your nose down and play, because there are politics in corporate America. There are people who are willing to be used and not enough people who are willing to reach out to them. There are people who they are willing to make time. There are people who are in positions of management and positions of leadership who can have a positive conversation behind closed doors that can open up an opportunity or create a greater access for you down the road. And we're not willing to leverage that. And then we'll turn around and feel embittered because the African Americans at the company I worked at weren't helping a brother out. They weren't looking out for a brother. No, they were there. We just kind of failed to resonate and find that maturity level. Now, for you, cousin, bro, I would say if you suffer with any of that, you are in a position to be a good mentor as well. So you got to get over the feeling of I don't want to be used a little bit, because as you continue to grow, there are people who would love to reach out to you. And I know this, I'm not just speaking a word of truth in your life, but people who would love to reach out and connect with you, and they're going to want to use you. And so you got to be willing to be used so that when you run across those who are just reaching and reaching, let me get some more. Like, can I get on your calendar again and again? That you remember that feeling when you were hungry. You remember that feeling, but you weren't homeless, but you were hungry. You had that hunger and ambition. And so in that same sense, be that person. Be willing to be that person that, okay, I may overstep a little bit. I may put a little bit extra in the pot today. Why? Because tomorrow, one of the things that I do without the expectation, one thing that I might say if I'm giving and giving is pay it forward. So I may not respect something personally in return, but pay it forward. So as you being the person who was used, and Moses, I'm saying it to myself now, Bruce, preaching to myself, be willing to be used so that once I'm in the position where others are calling upon me, I know how that hunger felt and that I'm able to give them a message that they're able to pay it forward. I won't be here next time, but they may be in a position where people are reaching out to them, and they will have known how it felt to have been that person to reach out. And then they'll also know that let me tell them to pay it forward as well. And that's how we're going to keep this positivity train afloat.
No, man, you like you said, you preaching. You just touched on tool for the first row, number 6, which is asking for help is not usury. And I think it goes back to that hunger, understanding who you were in your infancy, who you were as a young professional, who you were as a young man trying to figure out Del Paso Heights and trying to figure out how to be successful coming out of that environment. Asking for help does not make you a user. It makes you a very smart person to realize that you may not be able to figure out everything on your own, and you might know people who can actually contribute to you to help you get to somewhere that you're trying to get a little bit faster than if you were just carrying yourself on your own 2 feet. So that is the tool number 6. And then I want to also get into tool number 3, because you started touching base on this. Tool number 3 is base your value and the value of others upon internal qualities. You talked about like wanting to have your wife to have nice things, clothes and material things. That's one thing. But when you really start trying to measure and find out who you should be reaching down to pull back up, who you should be spending time with, giving your energy to, giving your time to, giving your resources to, when you're really trying to identify what that is, what that comes from is really understanding what internal qualities you have. I can give you the shirt off my back and not really care about your well-being. What I can't do is give you an abundance of my time and not care about your well-being. So when you start really identifying that internal climate and what those values are internally, and the worth of those things, the self-worth of yourself, it makes it a little easier to look at other people and identify what it is in them that's their intrinsic value. I have another friend, David, who uses that term a lot, and I love that term. I learned it a couple of years back interacting with him. But he talked about intrinsic value. What is the internal value of, we were talking about stock, but of the person in this particular case? What are you investing in? And what do you see when you're looking at this person? If you were to strip away the house, if you were to strip away the car, if you were to strip away the profession, if you were to strip all these things away, what do you still see in that person that is worth for you to decide that I want to give to them without expectation? And even if it is with the hopes of them paying it forward. I just want to be the example of what it is for them to pay it forward, so that they can see when they're on their path and they've reached a certain level to where they can reach back and help others. They know how to identify that same intrinsic value to pull that up and keep that, like you said, that positivity train going. We have a couple more things here in the chat. Bruce says, I'm using both of you.
Do it.
Hey, go on to do it, though. Want to do it? Go on and do it. Bob says, there is a fine line between used and useful. Absolutely. The gray areas in life are what typically are the most challenging areas. The black and the white is very easy to identify, but that gray area, knowing when you strayed too far to one side or the other, that is the challenge. And really, the best way that I've had to really look at addressing that challenge has been as, what is important to me? Who do I want to be? And again, one of the things that I've talked about with Antoine Wade on his show or on his channel is, what is the legacy I'm leaving behind? Because if the legacy I'm leaving behind is just something to be used, but it's not useful, then that's not a legacy that I want to leave. So it's definitely got to be something that is going to be useful, and that I'm not being just simply used. I'm not going to give up all my man hours, my life hours, to just simply be used and drained until I check out. And then I think they say like 60% of the people who go to your funeral don't even go to the gravesite to see you buried. I ain't planning on getting buried anyway, so but that's fine. But I think that's very fascinating to like live this life thinking that you were giving and helping all these people, and really find out at the end, man, you were just being used, and now they're looking for the next blood source that they can get, they can mosquito bite from. So that is a very fine line, Bob. Thank you for bringing that up. Shoot, we're at an hour, Cousin Mo. I have a couple more questions that I want to ask you, and then we'll go ahead and start wrapping. I still have 2 more tools. We'll see if we get to them in the conversation, or if I give the last tools for the first row outside of the Intersation conversation. But the next question that I want to ask you about when it comes to being used, it's really about, and there's really no, you can do a positive spin after, but this is on the more negative side. What, in your opinion, or maybe in your experience, what has been some of the collateral damage that you have seen in your life from people either using you or using other people in a non-healthy manner?
On a high level, it's still compassion fatigue. So I internalized a lot. I'm a very analytical person. I'm going through the checks and balances, the alternatives, sometimes often before I even give. And so my compassion fatigue sets in. Like I said, there's the anxiety, there's the sense of my self-worth or my connection, my identity, how I identify with my value in life, not being fully received or being outright rejected is something that I take hard. And in my experience, I don't handle that rejection the best. There was an upbringing around alcoholism being accepted. And so alcoholism was one of the things that I would naturally revert to. Just go back and drink. I can have a drink and get through it, and then the next day I'll get back. So punishing myself for not being as effective, taking it and saying, well, maybe there was something that I could have done better. Blaming myself for not being as convincing. Maybe I didn't convince them or persuade them to change, or maybe I didn't give them enough information. What did I do wrong? What did I miss? Maybe I read them wrong. And so beating myself into a bloody pulp or drinking myself into a stupor are some of the consequences that I've experienced when I was overused. There's a number of ways we could look at used, right? So was I played? Did somebody take my goodness and then intentionally misconstrue my intentions in front of other people just to make me look bad? That's a way that we can be used by others. There's one in relationships, which is probably the base level. Did she have an affair or cheat? And I really don't even need to speak to that when it's plain forward. Let her go. But then there's some that are even on a more personal level because your livelihood is invested, right? And so that's my contribution at work. When what I gave was not appreciated, or when what I gave was outright dismissed, is there any recourse for me? If something that was done to me is really a violation, almost seems like discriminatory. So let's go used all the way out. I'm an African American and they're using me as a quota. I'm gonna go as harsh as we can. There was a sense of racism or a hint of racism in the way that my contribution was dismissed. It wasn't just a personal attack on my intelligence, but something that was deeply enamored in somebody who had some very deep-seated cognitive dissonance issues or some intolerance issues. Was there a policy that could support me? Probably not. Was I willing to even go through the channels of getting some remedy for the way that I felt? Probably not. I think you brought it out in the beginning. Men aren't allowed to feel emotions. We're not allowed to embrace that, and especially not to take those to other men. And so we have some challenges that we deal with on that use. I've given mine in my retrospection. It used to be a lot of alcohol. I still deal with other issues. Now I try to find myself giving more. Reject me, I'm gonna find 100 more people that I can do more with. Take what I'm saying as a grain of salt. I'm going to find 10 more people who will take it and build a productive business out of it. This insight that you rejected that could have made you thousands, somebody's going to make tens of thousands of dollars off of it. And I'm going to have these conversations. I may not have been as clear as I needed to be or as concise as I needed to be, but it was perfect for somebody else. They could keep up and follow every analogy that I was making, the metaphors. They knew when I was talking about a personal relationship, a business relationship, and it made sense to them, even a spiritual level. So I'm not going to beat myself up anymore. I give myself permission and I give myself forgiveness when I get it wrong. And then I keep pressing towards the mark, because we have to be 7 times as positive as that one person can be negative.
Man, no, you just said a lot. And the last thing that you said, I just want to expand upon really quick, because what I took from what you just said in your last thing is sometimes it's not a matter of changing what you're saying or changing your pitch or whatever it is you're selling. Sometimes it's a matter of changing your audience. And it's not to discount the importance of people. But there was, in sales, I forget what the saying was. It was some will, some won't, so what next? And I don't remember, I just remember that from sales, where it was like, some people are going to see value in your product. Some people are going to see values in your words and your advice and the things that you give. Some people will see value in that. Some won't see the value in that, but they'll take it anyway, and then it'll just sit on their desk as a paperweight. Other people will, and either way, no matter what it is, either they'll take it, they won't take it, they'll take it and they won't use it, or they won't take it, no matter what it is. Sometimes it's a matter of not changing what it is that you're giving. It's a matter of changing your audience that you're giving it to. And I've actually experienced that quite a bit in doing this YouTube channel, where I do a lot of hours of watching YouTube. Some of them are like little guilty pleasure YouTube watching, but other parts of it is like, okay, so how is this person attracting thousands and millions of people to view their content? Because I want to be a first row network. I don't want to just be a first row channel. I'm looking to build a network. And so how do I attract millions of viewers to come and get different types of growth inspiring content? Well, as I'm trying to figure this formula out, I'm also realizing that if it involves me doing something that is counterintuitive to what I really want to give, then that's not the audience for me. So I'm not trying to branch out and garner the attention of everyone. I'm trying to garner the attention of those, like you said, who will, instead of not taking it and make zero, who will take it and make tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, or millions, not even of money, millions of impacts that I'll be able to make, because those are the people that are able to see the brand, grab a hold to it and say, this is a ride that I definitely want to be on, something that inspires me to grow every week. So I'm definitely with you on that, where you know, sometimes it's not a matter of trying to cater your story to the audience that you're trying to get to. Oh, I just want this audience. If I could just talk to IBM, if I could just talk to Intel, if I could just talk to Hewlett Packard, instead of catering to those audiences, sometimes it's a matter of going to the audiences that are on the outskirts of that and allow that to permeate within those other organizations that you want to get to. Sometimes people just can't hear from us. I see this with our kids all the time. Sometimes I'll tell them things that are genius, but they can't hear it from me because I'm their parent. And then they'll hear it from an uncle, or they'll hear it from a goddad, or they'll hear it from a cousin. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. And I'm like, that's just what I said. Like, what's wrong with you? But
real quick, let me give you one. So I was having a conversation with my daughter, receptivity, having a conversation with my daughter at the beginning of the school year, art group she wanted to form, like an organization. She became the president. Everybody got roles, CEO, treasurer, secretary, and all of that. So she's forming a group. I'm like, you know what? You got to get this to the teachers and let them know. She was like, yeah. Next thing you know, we went down to Thanksgiving, and her mom worked on a t-shirt thing. And I posted it on my Instagram where she did the business. She did the family reunion T-shirts, and everybody was buying them from. Everybody gave her kudos. Then she comes back. Next thing I know, it was like this week or last week, she had ended up writing a letter to the teacher talking about an after-school program, because they don't have them. You know how the schools took that out a long time ago. But an after-school program where they can sing, dance, and do art. And she was getting permission from the principal. They was like, yeah, and they'll get back to her on this week. So she finally wrote the letter. I said this at the beginning of the school year. We need to take this to the teachers and get their authorization that they can continue to give you resources instead of me having to go to Michael's. Now that she's did it, the teachers love her, and everybody, the kids are coming together almost like a full-blown business. YouTube pages that they want to start up. But you know, sometimes you just got to let them get it on their own time. Can't walk around the neighborhood thinking we can save everybody, but don't not be willing to have that conversation because you've built up so much compassion fatigue and now your wall's sky high. No, right. Be willing to have the conversation, but okay, everybody won't get it. Give yourself permission, give them permission to be ready when they're ready, and you just keep going with your positivity and you keep giving the message. Young Moses, I'm gonna watch this in my rewind stream myself, and I had to give myself that tip so I can keep pressing forward. Some will, some won't. So what? Next.
Right. Yeah. So with that, Cousin Mo, I mean, I feel like this has been a pretty good free flow conversation, Intersation. I want to ask you my final question, which I always ask. If there are 2 or 3 nuggets that you would want people who are watching live and or watching on the replay to take with them tonight from tonight's conversation about are you being used, what would those be? And if you could give them out, please, so I could take notes too.
Number 1, are you being used? You've just observed an hour-long conversation of sticking to the positive. Stick to the positive. Are you being used? It could be in a good way. Are you putting yourself out there to be used in the positive ways? What is your positive contribution that you would have to others? Have you identified it? If you haven't, take some more time to reflect, because there may be some toxicity that you're dealing with. And I think I even said it right, Brother Bruce, toxicity on the inside that you still have to check so that you can be a positive example. 7 to 1, 7 positive reinforcements to every 1 negative. That negative thing can stick with you and it can be a distraction. It can even prevent you from wanting to build those positive relationships. Rather than building those positive relationships or building positive outcomes in your relationships, what will you be constructing? You'll be constructing a wall. So my number 2, don't build that pity wall. Don't block yourself off from them. And there's no need to defend yourself right now. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Give yourself that permission to let your positivity shine, and give yourself forgiveness for those times where you may have failed to connect in the manner that you thought would have been fitting. My last jewel is it's a sippy cup. Keep pouring out, keep pouring out. I don't know where it's going to come from to refill the sippy cup, but keep pouring out. Don't keep score, just keep pouring out. When you have a little bit left, don't look at other people's cups. You just keep pouring out. You'd be amazed at how, what was it? I don't want to get spiritual, but they said I was preaching the 5 loaves of bread, the fish, and 2 fish, 5 loaves of bread, and you just keep breaking it. Keep breaking. You get some fish. You get some fish. You get some positive. You just keep doing what you do, because we need people like you in this world. That I don't want to be an motivational speaker, but if something we've said tonight inspires you, take some of these tools, write them down. Small changes. You may need to hear this video 7 times, and then after that, you might think and consider, what is the thing that I can actually execute on, and might have to come back even after that and say, well, do I like the person that I am becoming after you've applied a little bit of this positivity? So we're going to give it to you anyway. Whether you choose to love it, reject it, you can dismiss it right now. Somebody came in and turned me off immediately. Guess what? We're still here, and this video is in the air now, and it's free and it's positive, and you got it. That's the attitude that we have. Those are the jewels that I would have. Now I'm ready to sit back and take notes on the road. If you saw me looking around, I normally keep notes. So I was like, where is my notepad? That's what it made me. I'm not geeking. I normally take notes. I was like, I know I got a pen, but that's what it is. I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to actually cut off my video and listen in for the keys. And then I want to wish you all the best. Those in the chat, thank you for coming. And then those in the restream, thank you for engaging with us. Thank you for finding these conversations helpful. If you find some value in, hit us with a like so that we can continue to have these conversations. And before you go, Cousin Ro, what is the name of the person you had the last show with, or should I just look at the date?
Bob McKinley. The show was Intersations, Inside Leadership.
Inside Leadership. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you all.
That's for everybody. So man, I like those bullet points. I hope you guys wrote them down. If you didn't, really quick, is stick to the positive. Don't build a pity wall, and keep pouring out. Don't keep score. That's something I'll probably watch this, like you said, 7. Maybe I need to do 8 just to get the negative one out. But I'm gonna keep trying to not keep score. So I need to reinforce that. So really, for me, as always, for those who are used to Intersations, I like to present something called Tools for the First Row. Tonight, I changed it up a little bit, gave a couple of those tools out during the conversation. So if you missed them, you will have to go back into the conversation and find them. Little Easter eggs. But for those of you who have been paying attention for the night, I do have 2 more bullet points that I want to give to you, and then I'll give you a quick summary of all 6 of them, I believe there are. So the other 2 bullet points that I did have for Tools for the First Row, let me go back really quick. The reason why I call this channel The First Row is because when I was younger, I was actually taught by one of my business mentors that those people who sit on the first row, they get 2 things. They get the most money, and they get the most information, because there is no distraction between them and the person presenting that information. So this first row, you're on the first row tonight. You got a first row seat. If you just came in right now, we saved a seat for you on the first row. So I want to give you what I call tools for the first row. The 2 tools that I didn't get to tonight during the Intersation. The first one was acknowledge signs and or characteristics of usury. What this doesn't mean, I want to start with what this doesn't mean. What this doesn't mean is throw out an accusation of, oh, you're just trying to use me to get this or get that or to get whatever it may be. Doesn't mean that. What it really involves, what I mean when I say acknowledge signs of or characteristics of usury is utilize communication. If something kind of bubbles up in you where you feel like, are they trying to use me for something, or am I trying to use them for something? The best thing for you to do is to lean and fall back on communication. Communicate it. And that doesn't mean accuse them. That means be inquisitive. Ask questions. I mean, if somebody asks you, hey, I need to borrow $50,000, are you just going to be like, okay, here, and give it to them? Or might you ask some questions? Okay, do you need to borrow this, or do you need to have this? Because one of those involves the money coming back, one of them doesn't. You may need to ask questions and use that communication, use that inquisitive nature to really find out if this sign that you've seen, oh, that kind of looked a little suspect. Use the questioning, ask questions. Don't interrogate, just ask simple questions. Hey, when I took you out to dinner and you forgot your wallet magically, I've noticed you've done that a couple of times. Like, is it that you don't keep your wallet in a certain place? Like, what can we do to address this particular behavior? Because I mean, I don't mind us going back and forth. I have a personal friend who, for years, he and I would go to movies and we would just forget who was paying for what movie. It'd be like, oh, is it your turn this time or is it my turn? I don't know. Here, I'll pay. Okay, great. I don't know. Here, I'll pay. Okay, great. We went back and forth, and it wasn't that we were keeping score in that particular case. It was like, I got it this time, you got it next time, and maybe I'll forget who got it last time, so I got it next time too. It didn't matter, but we were open with that. Now, if there was a time where it was like every time we go to the movies, you say you want to see something and then you don't have money for the movies, then it's up to me, if I feel like I'm being used, to ask those questions. Sometimes maybe even uncomfortable questions, not accusatory questions, but uncomfortable questions. Ask those questions so you can get clarity and be able to make the decision for yourself if this is something that you still want to give. So that was the first tool that was left off. And then the last tool that I had here was reflect on the reciprocal nature of the relationship. This is not tit for tat. This is not I scratched your back, you scratch my back, I pat your head, you pat my head. This is just a simple time that you take alone to reflect on the reciprocal nature of your relationships. If you feel like you're pouring out more than what is being poured into you, like at some point, if you run out, you run out. Like Cousin Mo said, you keep pouring, but I don't care how much you pour. At some point, if the cup is empty and you turn it upside down, nothing's coming out. So this reciprocation or revisiting this and taking time to reflect upon the reciprocal nature of the relationship, what it does is allow you to make sure that you're still constantly being charged. And it may not even be from that relationship that you're charged from. A good example of this is our jobs. You know, I give my son every 2 weeks $20 to go towards his lunch. You can either save it, you can spend it all in one day, you can do whatever you want to do. There's plenty of stuff here to pack to make your own lunch. However, once that $20 is gone for that 2 week period, the $20 is gone. I'm not looking for him to refill my wallet with anything from that $20. However, I go to my job, and every time I do my job and I show up and I do good work and I get raises and I get whatever I get from them, then that refills my bank account. So the same way that my job refills my bank account so I can give the $20 to my son is the same way we should be looking at reflection when we're looking at the reciprocal nature of relationships. The refill may not be coming from the direct relationship that you're pouring into, because that person may genuinely not have that internal quality to pour back into you. They may not have the listening ear. They may not have the critical mind. They may not be solution driven. So they may not have those solutions or those things to pour back into you. So you have to make sure that you have a place that you are able to get that from, because other than that, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but I've experienced it where the account goes negative. There is a number beyond zero, and those numbers are negative numbers. And you don't want to be in that situation, because that's when the penalties come in. And you don't want to deal with the mental penalties that come when you're depleted completely beyond compassion fatigue, where you're completely depleted and you have nothing else to pour out. So really quick, I want to give you a quick run view of what the tools were, just so you can have them in order. The first tool tools for the first row on are you being used is give without expectation. The second is give yourself permission to say no under any circumstances. The third one is base your value and the value of others upon internal qualities. Number 4 is acknowledge signs and characteristics of usury. Number 5 is reflect on the reciprocal nature of the relationship. And number 6 is asking for help is not usury. So I hope you guys have enjoyed tonight's Intersation. Again, it was a free flow format. Let me know if you're still in the chat. Let me know in the chat how you felt about the free flow format. If you're not in the chat and you're watching live on watching on the replay, let me know in the comments how you felt about this format. I mean, something I want to play with from time to time, kind of get a little more spice to the conversation. But let me know what your thoughts are on that. The next time you will see us live on the first row will be tomorrow. It will be for the Wednesday word. The Wednesday word tomorrow will be on perceived invisibility. Ooh, I'm gone. That will be tomorrow, January 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I hope you can tune into that live. I'm always happy to engage with you guys in the live chat. Happy to engage with you guys in the comments if you're watching on the replay. Other than that, as always, it's been a great time. I'd like to thank you guys for sitting tonight on the first row. If you like this video, share it. If you haven't liked it already, like it. If you share it, please like it. I'm happy to engage with you again in the live chat. If you watch us live, if you catch us in the comments and you're watching a replay, I'm happy to engage with you there as well. There's nothing that is off the table. If you have a question that you want to ask, I'm actually going to start doing a Q&A series that you guys might want to tune into. It'll be an opportunity to ask me questions live on the air. I'll give you a wholehearted response, honest response back and feedback, hopefully a solution to whatever questions you ask. But until the next time, I look forward to seeing you guys on the first row. One love, peace, and God bless.